What's up, everyone? My name's Chef Jean-Paul Bourgeois, and we are in the Louisiana Cooking Test Kitchen, your authority for all things great out the Bayou State. Now, there are a few dishes more synonymous with Southern food than cornbread, but we're gonna jazz it up a little bit. Today, we are making crawfish cornbread. Let's get to work. Before we start cooking, let's go over some of our ingredients. Of course, we have crawfish tails. Those are 1 pound frozen packs from Louisiana. We also have some cornmeal, buttermilk, flour, some green onions, red bell peppers, an egg, some butter, and leavening, baking soda, and baking powder. We got a couple of things to do, but before you start cooking, you gotta make sure your cast iron skillet is preheated in the oven at 450 degrees. Mine's been in for about an hour. You wanna get that skillet ripping hot for when we start cooking. All right, let's get started here. I got my crawfish. There's a couple things I need to do with my crawfish before I can actually start cooking with them. Because these came in frozen, which is pretty common to get in those pound bags, they have they kind of accumulate some water through the freezing process. And what I like to do is just take some of that water and just kind of give that crawfish a gentle squeeze before I start cooking with them. Now, if you were making like a crawfish étouffée or putting this crawfish in gumbo, you could save this juice. It actually is kind of like a natural crawfish stock, but you want to make sure you're using Louisiana crawfish. Some of the overseas competitors aren't as fresh, aren't as good as quality, and that juice can get pretty fishy. So just really make sure you're buying Louisiana crawfish if you can. All right, I got a skillet here. I need to saute my crawfish with red bell pepper and green onions before I can start putting my cornbread together. I got a stick of butter that I'm gonna add to this skillet. As that melts, I'm gonna cut a little bit more green onion. You want about 4 green onions, thinly sliced. This is your only onion in this recipe. We're not gonna be adding any yellow or red or anything like that. So you wanna make sure that it has a good oniony bite. All right, that's looking pretty good there. All right, the butter in your skillet is ready when it starts to foam like so. You can see it's starting to form little golden brown hues in there from the milk solids beginning to toast. That's where I want to be. I'm going to add my green onions and my red bell peppers to that. I really want these ingredients to not just cook in this butter, but to fry. It wants to come back up to a saute and really get a good sizzle. I want that pan to be hot for when I put my crawfish in. That means these ingredients really have to get cooking. Grab a flat spatula. Just let that start to come together. You can add a little touch of salt and a little pinch of black pepper as well. So while this onion and bell pepper mixture fries in that butter, I'm going to go ahead and put my cornbread together. So we have cornmeal, flour, about a tablespoon of salt, some baking soda and baking powder. I'm going to give this a mix with my whisk first to get all those ingredients kind of incorporated. Off to the side, off camera right here, I have a little bit of melted butter as well. I'm just gonna get that I don't necessarily need it super hot. I just need it liquefied and melted. Then I'm gonna just kind of, with my whisk, give that a little mix up with that 1 whole egg. Get that egg in there. This recipe actually calls for milk, not buttermilk, like some folks might be using for traditional cornbread. And to that note, like if I'm just making skillet cornbread in a very traditional method, I'm usually not using any flour at all, but I find when you're adding ingredients like crawfish and vegetables to cornbread, it adds an element of moisture into your cornbread. So having that flour there to absorb some of that is kind of necessary when it comes to this dish. Now you can see my butter is really frying and those vegetables are softening in that hot butter. They still need a little more time. I'm gonna let them do its thing. Not only that, I have a little bit of honey. That sweetness just helps bring out the sweetness in the corn and the crawfish as well. No white sugar, just honey in there. Give that a good mix. Now that's ready to go, mostly until I have this ready to go. Now I have that melted butter. I'm gonna give a little stir in, slowly incorporating that into the cornbread mixture. That's looking good. You can see that cornbread mixture just kind of loosening up right there. This looking pretty good. I mean, this is cold crawfish. This is gonna drop the heat of that pan quite a bit. That's why we want it really hot and frying. Before I add my crawfish, I'm gonna go in with a little bit of chili flake. That's gonna be our heat in this recipe. The reason why I'm putting that in first, that chili flake really blooms in that hot fat, kind of toasting that chili flake, just bringing out more aromas in that, really complexizing this whole dish just a little bit more. And then I'm going in with my pound of Louisiana crawfish tails. All right, again, we want to get those crawfish tails frying up in that butter. Remember, there's still some liquid in those crawfish tails. We want to try to cook as much of that liquid out as possible. So don't rush this process. Make sure you get that butter frying again so those crawfish tails can release that moisture and evaporate that liquid from your pan. As my crawfish tails are finishing up in this pan, I like to just add about a teaspoon of granulated garlic in there, just to give that nice fresh pop of garlic. I'll turn my heat off, and then I can go straight into this bowl of cornbread batter. Get all that butter in there, all those lovely bits, and just fold that into the mixture. Remember how I said my skillet was preheating that oven at 450 degrees? I like to get good crispy bottoms on my cornbread. And this is one way to do it. Have that skillet preheated. Grab that out. Nice hot skillet. But not only that, I'm gonna get it right on that burner, on high, ripping as hot as I can. I'm gonna add, I didn't have this in the roundup of ingredient list, but you want some bacon fat or lard. Our clarified butter works as well. I want a fair amount of fat because what I want to do is I want to fry this cornbread in that skillet before I pop it in the oven. There was a little bit of water in that bacon grease, and that's why it sizzled so much, but now it's nice and smoky. That's what we want. And even let it get hotter. As soon as I drop that cornbread batter into this pan, it's gonna drop the temperature of the pan, so it needs to recover, but we wanna get a good fry out of that. I'm gonna add a nice low, about a half a stick of butter as well to that. And I'm doing that after the bacon grease gets hot so it doesn't brown too fast. You notice it's a lot of fat in there. Again, you'll see why I'm doing it this way in a little bit. Hot, hot, hot. That's how we're gonna get that good exterior crunch in that cornbread. And also make sure it doesn't stick to the sides of the pan. All right, we're nice and hot. I'm gonna go ahead and empty out the contents of this bowl straight in there. And you see how it's frying along the sides. I want to smooth that out. I'm not really touching the sides. I'm just making sure the top of that cornbread is flattened for the most part. And we're frying. I'm not going right into the oven right now. It's frying in that butter, and it's kind of making this shell around the outside before I put it in the oven. We got an empty oven at 450 degrees right in the middle rack. Let's get it in there. Now that's a pretty big skillet of cornbread right there. I would say about 10-15 minutes. We'll give it a check around 8 to see how it's cooking, but it's starting to smell really good in here. All right, I'm smelling the cornbread. It's smelling good. It's been in the oven for about 15 minutes. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, nice and golden brown up top. You can see I got that crispy, crunchy exterior there. Now, if we did our jobs right, and this should just flip right out, and I think it will, because as you can see, as I move it, and I kind of dislodge that exterior crust from the side, you can see it moving pretty freely on the bottom of that pan. Get that all loosened up like that. All right. What do you think? Huh? Moment of truth? All right. Ready? Now, no matter if it's crawfish cornbread or just traditional cornbread, I got to get a little butter smear on top of that, especially on that hot kind of exterior right there. Just kind of moistening up that exterior with some salted, really good butter. All right, that's looking good. Shall we cut into it? What do y'all think? Yeah? All right. Oh, I love that sound when you hit the cornbread. There you go. Crawfish cornbread, loaded with crawfish. No trolling for crawfish in this cornbread. Should be in every single bite. Let's give it a shot. It's nice and moist. Good crispy exterior, good moist interior. That is slamming. Such a great variation on a Southern classic. That's crawfish cornbread, y'all. My name's Chef Jean-Paul Bourgeois, and I am out.